floor by floor instead of popping out.
It was like, it was if they had detonated.
Yeah,
if they were planned to take down a building. Boom, 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 boom.
All the way down. I was watching it and on it.
Like, it sounded like gunfire, you know, bang, 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 and then all of a sudden, 3 big explosions.
Started walking down the stairs. We made it to the 8th floor. Big explosion. Blew us back into the 8th floor.
Do you know if it was an explosion or if it was a building collapse?
To me, it sounded like an explosion.
But it was a huge explosion.
Chief Albert Turry told me that he was here after the events that took place this morning. He tried to get his men out as quickly as he could, but he said that there was another explosion which took place. And then an hour after, there was another explosion in one of the towers here. So according to his theory, he thinks that there were actually devices that were planted in the building.
Sound reaches us after what we see. If the boom we just heard was the sound of the building collapsing, it would follow the collapse. Notice the puffs of concrete issuing from the sides of the building well ahead of the collapse wave. Watch both buildings collapsing straight down, directly into the path of most resistance.
I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and we watched the building collapse.
Never before in the history of the world has a steel building collapsed due to fire. Steel melts at temperatures of 2,750 degrees Fahrenheit and above, attained only in a blast furnace or when a powerful incendiary such as thermite is used. The ground continued to burn.
You'd get down below and you'd see molten steel running down the channel rails. Like you're in a foundry. Like lava.
The crews kept spraying, but still, underground, molten metal flowed and the fires burned on.
You see how this debris is still smoking? That's when the fire's gonna still burning. 8 weeks later, we still got fires burning.
The fires were not sufficiently hot to melt the steel. So what is this molten metal? It's a direct evidence for the use of high-temperature explosives such as thermite. Thermite produces molten iron as an end product.
Okay. We appreciate your coming on, even if I don't understand your theories. We appreciate you trying to explain them. Thanks.
Each building was supported by 287 steel columns. These columns ran from the basements through the roofs, and yet they ended up in a pile of rubble with most of the steel in pieces 25 to 50 feet long. This could happen only if these columns were sliced by some very powerful kind of energy.
These core columns were discovered after the collapse. The angled cut occurs in exactly the manner that shaped charges slice through steel beams to control the way they fall. Notice the hardened, once liquid metal.
All of a sudden we heard an explosion. It was a huge explosion that came from under my feet, meaning that it came from the sub-levels between B2 and B3, and there was a huge explosion at the top of the building. You could hear the difference from the bottom and all the way through the top. The one from the top, which was actually seconds after, was heard very far away. The one at the basement was pretty loud, and you felt your actual feet moving with the floor. The tremor that is sent through the floors, that the walls cracked and the false ceiling totally collapsed.
You just saw that all the windows were blown out. The lobby looked like the plane hit the lobby.
I go downstairs, the foreman tells me to go to remove the containers. As I'm walking by the main freight car of the building, in the corridor, that's when I got blown. I mean, the impact of the explosion, of whatever happened, it threw me to the floor.
An explosion is heard as white smoke rises at the base of the building.
Jane, what more can you tell us about the Salomon Brothers building and its collapse?
Well, only really what you already know. Details are very, very sketchy. There's almost a sense down. As you can see behind me, the Trade Center appears to be still burning. We see these huge clouds of smoke and ash, and we know that behind that there's an empty piece of what was a very familiar New York skyline, a symbol of the financial prosperity of this city, but completely disappeared now, and New York is still unable to take on board what has happened to them today.
5 images from a security camera in front of the Pentagon. These images show an object flying into the Pentagon. The camera shows a trail of white smoke only slightly above the ground. The second image shows an erupting giant bright fireball. The third image and following 2 show the fireball becoming darker and larger while rising upward. It is obvious that whatever hit the Pentagon was not big enough to be a Boeing 757. In this picture, you can see the trail of a missile heading toward the Pentagon. The FBI will not release this confiscated video from the security cameras from a nearby gas station, hotel, and other buildings. But where are the pieces? There were 64 people on Flight 77, but there is no sign of their bodies, or even their blood. This hole was supposedly created by Flight 77, but nothing in the rubble would support such a theory. Inside the offices, the only rubble we find is construction material.